The stars above planet Velthara burned with a soft purple light. The Velthara people had lived here for thousands of years. They were tall beings with scales that shimmered like emeralds in the sun. They were not warriors or traders. They were keepers of history. Their great library held the stories of 10,000 different species from across the galaxy. Archivist Tilrath stood in the central tower of the library. His old eyes scanned the data streams that flowed through the air like rivers of light. Each stream carried the history of a different civilization. Some were millions of years old. Others were new, barely a few centuries. The Velthara treated all histories with the same respect. Every species deserved to be remembered. The first warning came at dawn. Red lights flooded the command center. Defense satellites were detecting something massive entering their star system. Tilrath rushed to the observation deck. What he saw made his blood turn cold. The sky was filled with ships, thousands of them. They moved like insects, swarming and twisting through space. These were the Scorlax. Every species in the galaxy feared them. They were not alive in the way most beings understood life. They were silicon-based creatures that thought as one mind. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They only consumed. The Scorlax ate entire planets. They would strip a world down to its core, taking every mineral, every resource, every atom of useful material. Then they would move to the next world. They had destroyed hundreds of civilizations. Now they had come for Velthara. Tilrath activated the emergency protocols. Messages went out across the galaxy at light speed. The Velthara called the Galactic Council, the great alliance of powerful species that ruled the stars. They called the Draxian hegemony, whose massive fleets protected the core worlds. They called the Confederated Worlds, the trading empire that connected thousands of systems. The responses came quickly, but none brought hope. The Galactic Council expressed sympathy, but said Velthara was too far from the core. It would take months to send a fleet, and by then, nothing would remain. The Draxians said they could not spare ships for a minor world on the edge of known space. The Confederated Worlds offered to evacuate important individuals for a price the Velthara could not pay. One by one, every major power in the galaxy said the same thing. The Velthara were not worth saving. The Scorlax reached the outer planets within hours. Velthara's small defense fleet tried to stop them. 20 ships against thousands. It was like throwing stones at an ocean. The defense ships disappeared in bursts of light. The Scorlax swarm kept coming. Tilrath watched as the enemy reached Velthara's 3 moons. The Scorlax landed on the rocky surfaces and began to dig. Within minutes, they were tearing the moons apart from the inside. Massive chunks of rock broke free and were pulled into the Scorlax harvesting vessels. The moons that had orbited Velthara for billions of years were being eaten alive. Evacuation ships launched from the surface, carrying millions of civilians. The Scorlax shot them down without mercy. Escape pods scattered across space. Some made it to the outer system. Most did not. Tilrath felt his heart break as he watched the lights of dying ships fade one by one. In the library's deepest vault, Tilrath made a decision. If the Velthara were going to die, their library would die with them. But perhaps someone should know they had existed. Perhaps someone should know they had tried. He accessed an old file, one marked with a strange symbol. It was a contact frequency for a species the Velthara had met 60 years ago. The species called themselves humans. They had come from a small blue world far from the galactic center. They had been friendly and curious. They had shared their art, their music, their stories with the Velthara. The Velthara had carefully preserved it all in the great library. But humans had been different from other species. They had come in old ships that barely worked. Their technology was centuries behind the great powers. When they tried to join the Galactic Council, they had been laughed at, called primitives, called resource wasters who had nearly destroyed their own planet. The other species had mocked them openly. The humans had left quietly. They had thanked the Velthara for their kindness and returned to their home system. No one had heard from them since. The galaxy had forgotten they existed. Tilrath did not know if the humans could help. He did not even know if they were still alive. But the Velthara had been kind to them when no one else was. Perhaps they would remember. He activated the ancient frequency. The message was simple. It contained no demands, no promises of payment. Just a plea from one dying people to friends they had once known. This is Archivist Tilrath of Velthara. We are under attack by the Skorlak swarm. Our world will fall within days. The galaxy has abandoned us. We saved your history when others mocked it. We treated you with honor when others showed you none. Please, if you can hear this, remember us. Remember that we tried to preserve the beauty of all species, including yours. Goodbye, friends. The message shot out into the darkness of space, traveling faster than light toward the region where Earth existed. Tilrath did not expect an answer. He returned to the observation deck to watch his world die. Above him, the first moon finally broke apart completely. The Skorlak swarm moved closer to the planet. They would reach the surface by tomorrow. Tilrath closed his eyes and prayed to the old gods of Velthara. Not for salvation. That would not come. He prayed that someone, somewhere, would remember his people had existed, that they had tried to do good in a galaxy that valued only power. In the darkness of space, the message traveled on, carrying the last hope of a dying world. The message reached Earth's distant outreach station 3 hours after it was sent. Commander Rachel Torres was drinking coffee when the computer started screaming. Every alert system in the station activated at once. Ancient frequencies that had been silent for 60 years suddenly blazed with activity. Rachel nearly dropped her cup. She pulled up the message and listened. Her hands started shaking. By the end, tears were running down her face. She had been a child when Earth made contact with the Velthara. She remembered the news broadcasts, the friendly aliens who actually treated humans like equals, the beautiful library they maintained. She forwarded the message to Earth Command immediately. Then she did something that broke protocol. She sent it to every news network on Earth. Within minutes, billions of humans knew that the Velthara were dying. Within an hour, Earth was screaming for action. The message reached the Solar Parliament while they were in session. President Elena Koskov stood before the assembled representatives. She played the message for everyone to hear. The chamber fell silent. 60 years ago, Elena said quietly, we went to the stars with hope. We wanted to join the great galactic community. We wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. She paused, her jaw tight with old anger. Instead, we were humiliated. The Galactic Council called us primitives. The Draxians laughed at our ships. The Confederated World said we had nothing of value. They looked at Earth, saw the scars from our old wars and our pollution, and decided we were trash. The representatives nodded. Everyone remembered the Treaty of Proxima. Earth had been forced to sign away rights to 3 systems just to avoid conflict. Alien ambassadors had mocked humanity on live broadcasts. One Draxian general had said humans would be extinct within a century. Only one species treated us with respect, Elena continued. The Velthara. They welcomed us. They preserved our art and our history in their great library. They said every civilization deserved to be remembered, no matter how young or how damaged. She looked around the chamber. Now they are dying, and the same powers that mocked us have abandoned them. The galaxy thinks the Velthara are not worth saving. Her voice turned cold. I say we show the galaxy exactly how wrong they are about us. The vote was fast. It was unanimous. Earth would answer the call. Not with diplomacy or negotiations, with force. What the galaxy did not know was that humanity had spent 60 years preparing. After the humiliation at Proxima, Earth had made a decision. If the galaxy would not respect them, then the galaxy would fear them. Every nation on Earth had contributed. Every resource had been focused on one goal, making humanity strong enough that no one would ever dismiss them again. Beyond Neptune, hidden in the darkness of the outer solar system, massive shipyards had been working non-stop. Forge worlds in the Kuiper Belt had been building war machines. Earth's best scientists had been developing weapons that would make the galaxy's militaries look primitive. Humanity had been preparing for war. Fleet Admiral Chen received her orders in person. She stood in the war room, surrounded by holograms of Earth's hidden fleet. 300 dreadnoughts, 500 cruisers, 1,000 smaller vessels, carrier groups that could launch fighter wings numbering in the tens of thousands. It was a force that rivaled anything the great powers could field. "Admiral," President Koskov said, "the Velthara showed us kindness when no one else would. Now we will show them what humanity does for its friends." Chen nodded slowly. She was a veteran of the resource wars. She had fought in the battles for Mars and the siege of Titan. She was hard, cold, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting humanity's interests. "What are our rules of engagement?" she asked. "There are no rules," Koskov replied. "The Skorlax are a plague. You will exterminate them, every single one in that system. Hold nothing back. Use every weapon we have developed. Show the galaxy what humans are capable of when we stop being nice." Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. "It will be my pleasure, Madam President." The fleet began moving within 2 hours. Ships emerged from hiding spots throughout the solar system. Crews that had been training in secret for decades finally got their orders. Weapons that existed only in classified files were loaded and armed. Humanity's war machine came alive. The journey to Velthara would take 5 days at maximum speed. Chen spent that time reviewing intelligence on the Skorlax. They were tough. They operated as a hive mind. They had destroyed hundreds of civilizations, but they had never fought humans before. Chen called a meeting of her ship captains. Thousands of officers appeared as holograms around her command deck. She looked at each one. "The galaxy thinks we are weak," she said. "They think we are primitives who got lucky with some technology. They are about to learn the truth. Humanity did not become the dominant species on Earth by being nice. We evolved on a death world where everything wanted to kill us. We learned to fight before we learned to talk. War is in our blood." She pulled up tactical displays. "The Skorlax use swarm tactics. They overwhelm enemies with numbers. They expect fear and confusion. They will not get it from us. We will hit them with coordinated strikes. We will use weapons they have never seen. We will show them what happens when humans decide something needs to die." The captains roared their approval. Chen could see the hunger in their eyes. 60 years of being dismissed. 60 years of being told they were nothing. Now they would prove everyone wrong. On the 5th day, the fleet reached the edge of the Velthara system. Sensors showed the Skorlax had already destroyed 2 of the 3 moons. They were beginning to attack the planet's surface. Millions of Velthara were already dead. Chen did not hesitate. She gave one simple order. "All ships, battle formation. Target every Skorlax vessel in the system. Show no mercy. Let them see what happens when humanity goes to war. Begin extermination protocol." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the Skorlax swarm. 300 dreadnoughts appeared like vengeful gods. Weapon systems that had taken decades to develop came online. The sky above Velthara lit up with fire. The Skorlax turned to face this new threat. They had destroyed 100 civilizations. They did not understand fear. They swarmed toward the human fleet with millions of strike craft. Admiral Chen watched them come. Her smile grew wider. The Skorlax were about to learn a very important lesson. You do not threaten humanity's friends. The Skorlax swarm moved like a living thing. Millions of ships, from tiny fighters to massive harvesters, turned as one toward the human fleet. They had consumed worlds for thousands of years. They knew only one response to any threat: overwhelm and destroy. On the surface of Velthara, archivist Tilrath stood in the ruins of his city. Buildings burned around him. The sky was filled with fire as Skorlax dropships tore through the atmosphere. He had accepted death hours ago. His only regret was that the great library would burn with him. Then the sky changed. New lights appeared. Massive shapes dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the planet. Tilrath's datapad started receiving signals in old human languages. His hands shook as he activated the translation program. The display showed 300 ships. Each one was the size of a small city. Their hulls were covered in weapons that glowed with strange energy. Tilrath recognized the symbols on their sides: the flag of Earth. The humans had come. But these were not the humans he remembered. 60 years ago, their ships had been crude things, barely holding together. These vessels were works of art and terror. They moved with perfect coordination. Every weapon tracked targets with machine precision. The humans had not just improved, they had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen. Admiral Chen watched the Skorlax swarm approach on her tactical display. Millions of enemy contacts. Most species would panic at those numbers. Chen felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "All ships," she broadcast, "fire at will." The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railguns fired first. These were not the primitive kinetic weapons other species used. Human engineers had spent decades perfecting them. Each round was accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit, they released energy equal to nuclear weapons. Skorlax ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were clouds of superheated gas. Entire formations disappeared in seconds. The railguns fired continuously, each shot perfectly calculated to maximize damage. The computer systems targeting them were learning and adapting in real time. The Skorlax pressed forward. More ships poured in to replace the ones destroyed. They launched their own weapons. Energy beams and kinetic missiles by the thousands. Human point defense systems activated. Every ship had hundreds of automated turrets. They tracked incoming fire with AI assistance. Lasers and small railguns created walls of destruction around each vessel. 98% of Skorlax weapons were destroyed before they could hit anything. The 2% that got through hit human shields. Energy barriers flickered but held. The shields were another human innovation. They did not just block energy, they redirected it, feeding it back into the ship's power systems. The more the Skorlax fired, the stronger the human shields became. "Launch fighters," Chen ordered. Bay doors opened on the carrier ships. Wings of human fighters poured out like angry hornets. Each fighter was piloted by AI systems that thought faster than biological minds. They moved in perfect formation, weaving through the battle at speeds that would kill organic pilots. The fighters carried missiles, smart missiles. Each one had its own AI that could recognize targets, adapt to countermeasures, and cooperate with other missiles. They swarmed the Skorlax ships like wolves hunting prey. When point defense destroyed some, the others learned and adjusted their approach. Within minutes, thousands of Skorlax vessels were burning. On Velthara, Tilrath could hardly believe what he was seeing. The Skorlax swarm that had seemed unstoppable was being torn apart. Human ships moved through the enemy formations like sharks through fish. Every movement was calculated. Every shot found its target. This was not a battle. It was an execution. The Skorlax adapted. They always adapted. They changed their formations, spread out their ships, tried new tactics. It did not matter. The humans adapted faster. Their AI systems had been trained on thousands of simulated battles. They had fought every possible scenario millions of times in virtual space. The Skorlax had never faced an enemy like this. Admiral Chen watched the battle develop exactly as predicted. The Skorlax were tough, but they thought in predictable patterns. Hive minds were efficient but lacked creativity. Humans had both efficiency and innovation. It made them deadly. "Time to show them something special," Chen said quietly. "Activate the gravity weapons." At her command, 20 specialized vessels moved forward. These ships had been the most expensive part of the fleet to build. They mounted weapons that manipulated gravity itself, technology that other species considered impossible. Humans had made it work. The gravity weapons fired. Space itself twisted. Massive gravitational fields appeared in the middle of Skorlax formations. Ships were pulled together, crushed into tiny points. Some were torn apart by tidal forces. Others simply compressed into balls of metal and screaming circuits. One gravity pulse destroyed 1,000 Skorlax ships. Then another and another. The weapons fired slowly, needing time to charge between shots. But each shot was devastating. The Skorlax swarm began to break apart. For the first time in thousands of years, the Skorlax collective mind felt something like fear. This was not supposed to happen. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. They had destroyed civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Now they were being slaughtered by a species they had never heard of. The Skorlax tried to retreat. It was too late. Human ships had surrounded them. Faster-than-light travel was impossible inside the gravity fields being generated. They were trapped. "No survivors," Chen ordered. "Hunt down every single one." The human fleet split into groups. They began systematic extermination. Every Skorlax ship was tracked and destroyed. The fighters pursued enemy vessels into asteroid fields and gas clouds. When the Skorlax tried to hide on the remaining moon, human marines were deployed. They went down in drop pods, wearing powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. The marines fought the Skorlax on the ground. It was brutal, close combat. The Skorlax were strong and fast, but humans had evolved fighting megafauna on Earth. They knew how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. The Marines used plasma rifles, explosive charges, and raw determination. Within hours, the moon was clear. 6 hours after the battle began, it was over. The Skorlax swarm that had taken 3 days to devastate Velthara's defenses was gone. Completely. Not a single Skorlax entity remained alive in the system. Admiral Chen stood on her command deck, watching the last enemy ship explode. Her fleet had taken minimal damage, 3 ships with shield damage, 17 fighters lost, against millions of enemies. The analysts had predicted higher casualties. Human technology had exceeded even their own expectations. She opened a channel to Velthara's surface. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen of the Solar Federation. The Skorlax have been eliminated. Your world is secure. Humanity remembers those who showed us kindness. We have come to repay that debt." On the surface, Tilrath collapsed to his knees. Around him, surviving Velthara emerged from shelters and ruins. They looked up at the sky, at the human fleet that blocked out the stars. These ships had saved them when the entire galaxy had abandoned them. The humans had come. Tilrath thought about the young, struggling species he had met 60 years ago. The friendly aliens with crude ships and hopeful eyes. He looked at the massive dreadnoughts floating above his world and understood. Humanity had not disappeared. They had been preparing, growing, becoming something terrifying. The galaxy had dismissed them as primitives. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. At first, most species did not believe it. The Skorlax swarm had been destroyed, completely eliminated in 6 hours. By humans, the same humans who had been laughed out of the Galactic Council 60 years ago. On the Draxian homeworld, Supreme Commander Vortax watched the battle recordings for the 5th time. His military analysts had confirmed the data was real. His hands clenched into fists. The Draxians were the galaxy's greatest military power. They had held that position for 3,000 years. Their fleets were the largest. Their weapons were the most advanced, or so they had thought. "Run the simulation again," Vortax ordered. The tactical computer projected a hypothetical battle. Draxian fleet versus human fleet. Equal numbers. The simulation ran for 30 seconds before stopping. Result, 94% Draxian casualties, human losses minimal. "Again," Vortax growled. "Give our fleet every advantage." The simulation ran again. Same result. The computers did not lie. Human weapons technology was at least a century ahead of anything the Draxians had. Human tactics were more sophisticated. Human AI systems were faster and smarter. In a straight fight, humanity would win. Vortax slammed his fist on the table. How did this happen? They were primitives, barely capable of space travel. His chief analyst spoke quietly. "We dismissed them, Commander. We did not watch them. For 60 years they built in secret. While we were comfortable, they were preparing. We made them into this." At the Galactic Council headquarters, emergency sessions were being held around the clock. Representatives from 1,000 species argued and panicked. Some wanted to immediately offer humanity a council seat. Others wanted to form a coalition to contain the threat. A few species suggested preemptive strikes before humanity grew stronger. The Council's military committee ran their own simulations. The results were classified immediately. If humanity wanted to, they could defeat any single species in the galaxy. A coalition might stop them, but the cost would be enormous. Trillions dead, hundreds of worlds destroyed, and humanity had shown they were willing to fight to the end. "We created a monster," one representative said quietly. "We pushed them into a corner, mocked them, dismissed them. Now they have become something we cannot control." Meanwhile, on Velthara, the human fleet had not left. They had established a defensive perimeter around the planet. Human engineers worked alongside Velthara crews to rebuild the orbital defenses. But this time, the defenses used human technology. Admiral Chen walked through the ruins of Velthara's capital city. Her marine escort followed at a respectful distance. Velthara civilians watched her pass. Many approached to thank her. Some brought gifts, small things, tokens of gratitude. Chen accepted each one personally. She found archivist Tilrath in what remained of the Great Library. The old Velthara was trying to salvage data crystals from the wreckage. Chen helped him move a fallen beam. "Thank you," Tilrath said quietly, "for coming, for remembering us." "You were the only ones who treated us with respect," Chen replied. "You preserved our history when others said it was worthless. Humanity does not forget debts." Tilrath looked at her carefully. "The galaxy is afraid of you now." "Good. Let them be afraid." Chen's expression hardened. "For too long, the strong have bullied the weak out here. The great powers decide who lives and who dies based on profit and convenience. You were going to die because you were not valuable enough to save. That ends now." She gestured to the sky where human ships orbited. "This world is under the protection of the Solar Federation. Anyone who wants to harm you will have to go through us first. And after what we did to the Scorlax, I do not think anyone will try." Over the next weeks, the human presence on Velthara became permanent. A military base was established on the largest remaining moon. Human civilians arrived to help with reconstruction. Teachers, doctors, engineers. They did not come as conquerors. They came as allies. But the message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity was protecting Velthara. Anyone who objected could take it up with Admiral Chen's fleet. 3 other species contacted Earth within a month. All of them were minor powers on the galactic frontier. All of them faced threats from aggressive neighbors. They requested defensive pacts with humanity. Earth accepted. President Koskov addressed the Solar Parliament. "The galaxy operates on strength. We have shown we are strong. Now we will use that strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will be what the Galactic Council should have been. guardians of the weak, champions of the forgotten. Not everyone in the galaxy was happy with this development. The Draxian hegemony issued formal protests. Humanity was disrupting the established order. They were interfering in regions outside their authority. They needed to submit to council oversight. Earth's response was simple. We do not recognize the council's authority over human affairs. We will defend our allies. Any attempt to interfere will be considered an act of war. The Draxians were furious, but their simulations had been clear. War with humanity would be devastating. They backed down, but the hatred grew stronger. More species began seeking human protection. Within 3 months, 20 systems had joined the growing Human Defense Coalition. These were all species that had been ignored or exploited by the major powers. Now they had a protector. The Galactic Council fractured into factions. Some wanted to integrate humanity into the existing structure. Others wanted to isolate them. A few species quietly began trying to steal human technology, hoping to level the playing field. Human intelligence agencies caught them all. On Velthara, Tilrath worked to restore the Great Library. Human technicians helped him recover data that had been thought lost. As he worked, he made a decision. The library would expand its mission. It would not just preserve history, it would tell the truth about current events. He created a new archive. It told the story of humanity, not just their recent rise, but their history. Thousands of years of constant war on a harsh world. The development of technology despite limited resources, the scars they had inflicted on themselves, and how they had learned from those mistakes. The humiliation at Proxima and the 60 years of preparation that followed. He made sure every species could access this archive. He wanted the galaxy to understand what they had created. Humanity had not wanted to be conquerors. They had wanted to be partners. The galaxy had rejected that. So humans had become something else, something stronger, something frightening. Let this be a lesson, Tilrath recorded in the archive's introduction. Kindness matters. The Velthara showed humans respect when no one else would. When we needed help, they crossed the galaxy to save us. But this is also a warning. Do not mistake human kindness for weakness. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they can be both gentle and terrible. They will protect their friends with absolute devotion, and they will destroy their enemies with absolute certainty. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of her flagship, looking at Earth through the view screen. Behind her, tactical displays showed the expanding sphere of human influence. 30 systems now, growing every week. Ships were being built faster than she could staff them. Humanity's war economy was in full swing. She thought about the irony. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as weak. In doing so, they had created exactly what they feared. A military power that could challenge the established order, a species that would not bow to threats or intimidation. Chen smiled. She did not feel guilty. The galaxy had made its choice 60 years ago. Now it would live with the consequences. The stars had shaken when humanity's Armada appeared at Velthara. They would continue shaking as humanity reshaped the balance of power that had stood for millennia. And every species that had ever been dismissed or abandoned would be watching. Learning that there was finally someone who would stand up for them. The age of the old powers was ending. The age of humanity had begun. 3 months after the Battle of Velthara, Ambassador David Zhang stood before the Galactic Council. It was the first time a human had addressed them in 60 years. The massive chamber was packed. Representatives from thousands of species watched in person or through hologram projections. The room was absolutely silent. Zhang was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had been at Proxima 60 years ago. He had watched alien diplomats laugh at humanity's request for council membership. He had stood silent while they mocked Earth's damaged environment and called humans too primitive to matter. He had never forgotten that day. Now he stood before them again. But everything had changed. Members of the Galactic Council, Zhang began. I come before you not to request membership, not to ask for recognition. I come to inform you of a new reality. Humanity is now a sovereign power in this galaxy. We will pursue our interests as we see fit. We will protect our allies as we choose. Any species that wishes peaceful relations will find us to be valuable partners. Any species that wishes conflict will face consequences. A Draxian representative stood up, his scales turning dark with anger. You threaten the Council? You are one species among thousands. You have no authority here. Zhang smiled coldly. Authority is not given. It is taken. For thousands of years, species like yours have controlled the galaxy through military might. You decided who lived and who died, based on profit and convenience. The Velthara were abandoned to die because they were not valuable enough to save. That system is broken. We are here to fix it. The Council maintains order, another representative argued. Without us, there would be chaos. You maintain the order that benefits you, Zhang replied. You protect the rich and the powerful. You ignore everyone else. We watched you abandon the Velthara. We will not let that happen again. Any species that faces extinction will have the option to seek human protection. If we accept them as allies, they will be safe. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. The Council erupted into arguments. Some representatives demanded that humanity submit to Council authority. Others wanted economic sanctions. A few openly called for military action. Zhang waited for the noise to die down. You can argue all you want, he said quietly. You can make threats. You can pass resolutions. None of it matters. The galaxy has changed. You can either adapt to the new reality or be left behind. He pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy. 30 systems glowed green, marking the Human Defense Coalition. More systems were highlighted yellow, indicating they were in negotiations. The green zone was growing. These species have chosen to stand with humanity. They were ignored by this council, exploited by the great powers. Now they have protection, real protection, and more join us every day. You are building an empire, the Draxian accused. We are building an alliance, Zhang corrected. Our partners are equals. They govern themselves. They keep their own cultures and laws. We only provide military defense, something this council failed to do. A representative from a smaller species stood up. What humanity has done is admirable, but you must understand our concern. You have built a fleet that rivals any great power. You have weapons we do not understand. You have shown you will use force without hesitation. How can we trust you will not become the very thing you claim to oppose? Zhang nodded. It was a fair question. Judge us by our actions. We came when the Velthara called, even though we gained nothing from it. We are rebuilding their world. We have offered protection to species that have nothing to give us in return. We do not demand tribute. We do not impose our culture. We only ask that our allies treat their own people fairly. He paused. But make no mistake. We will defend ourselves and our allies with overwhelming force. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived because we learned to fight better than anything else. That instinct still lives in us. If you come in peace, you will find us generous. If you come in war, you will find us unforgiving. The session lasted for hours. Zhang answered questions, deflected threats, and made humanity's position clear. When it finally ended, the galaxy was divided. Some species immediately requested meetings with Earth's diplomatic corps. Others began forming defensive coalitions against the human threat. The established order was fracturing. On Velthara, archivist Tilrath received a special visitor. President Elena Koskov had come personally to see the great library. She walked through the restored halls, looking at the preserved histories of thousands of civilizations. This is beautiful, she said quietly. You have saved so much. given so much to the galaxy. And the galaxy abandoned us to die, Tilrath replied. Until you came. Koskov turned to him. I want to make you an offer. The Human Defense Coalition needs a cultural center, a place where all member species can share their histories and learn from each other. We would like Velthara to be that center. The Great Library would become the cultural archive of the Coalition. You would have funding, protection, and access to the histories of every species that joins us. Tilrath's eyes widened. You would trust us with this? You already proved your worth. You treated us with respect when no one else would. You preserved our history when others said it was worthless. Now we want to help you preserve everyone's history. The strong should protect the wise. That is how civilization should work. Tilrath accepted. Within weeks, construction began on a massive expansion to the Great Library. Human architects worked alongside Velthara designers. The new structure would be the largest cultural archive in the known galaxy, protected by human warships and open to all species. On Earth, the military buildup continued. More shipyards were constructed, more weapons were developed. But now there was also a diplomatic corps. Human ambassadors spread across the frontier, meeting with minor species, offering protection and partnership. The Human Defense Coalition grew steadily. Not all encounters were peaceful. A Draxian fleet attempted to intimidate one of humanity's new allies. Human ships arrived within hours. The standoff lasted 3 days. Finally, the Draxians withdrew. They had run their simulations. They knew what would happen if they stayed. The message was clear. Humanity's allies were untouchable. Admiral Chen was promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition Forces. She oversaw the integration of allied species militaries into the human command structure. She was tough, but fair. Species that joined the coalition kept their own fleets, but trained alongside human forces. They learned human tactics. They received access to human technology. In return, they pledged mutual defense. Within 6 months, 50 systems had joined. Within a year, it was 100. The Human Defense Coalition became a major power bloc in the galaxy, not the largest, but the most powerful militarily, and still growing. The Galactic Council tried to adapt. They offered concessions to minor species, hoping to slow the flow of defections. They lowered trade barriers. They promised better protection. It was too late. The smaller species had seen what happened at Velthara. They knew the Council's promises were empty. They chose humanity. On the first anniversary of the Battle of Velthara, a memorial was held. Representatives from every coalition species attended. Tilrath gave a speech in front of the rebuilt Great Library. 1 year ago, my people were dying. The galaxy had abandoned us. We sent one last message to friends we hoped would remember us. They came, not just to save us, but to change everything. Humanity showed the galaxy that kindness matters, that the weak deserve protection, that the strong have a duty to those who cannot protect themselves. He paused, looking at the crowd. Some say humans are dangerous. They are right. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they are dangerous to those who prey on the weak, to those who exploit the helpless, to those who believe might makes right. For those of us who only want to live in peace, humans are the greatest friends we could ask for. The crowd erupted in applause. Admiral Chen stood in the back, watching. She thought about how far humanity had come. From a dismissed, mocked species to the protectors of 100 worlds, from outcasts to the most feared military power in the galaxy. She thought about the cost. Humanity had spent enormous resources building their military. They had sacrificed much to become this strong. But as she looked at the grateful faces in the crowd, at species who would have been destroyed without human intervention, she knew it was worth it. Zhang found her after the ceremony. "Do you ever wonder if we are becoming what we fought against?" he asked. "We have power now, enormous power. What happens if we start to abuse it? Chen was quiet for a moment. That is why we must never forget where we came from. We were dismissed, humiliated. We know what it feels like to be powerless. As long as we remember that, as long as we use our strength to protect rather than exploit, we will be different. She looked up at the stars. The galaxy will test us. They will try to corrupt us. They will wait for us to fail. We cannot let that happen. We must be what we promised to be. Guardians, champions, the species that stands up when everyone else stands aside. Zhang nodded. The galaxy has changed. Because of us. Yes, Chen agreed. And it will keep changing. More species will join us. The old powers will either adapt or fade away. We have started something that cannot be stopped. A new order based on protection rather than exploitation. Justice rather than profit. She smiled. The galaxy shook when our Armada appeared at Velthara. It shook because we showed them that strength and honor can coexist, that the powerful can choose to be kind. They are still shaking, and they will continue to shake as we prove that a better galaxy is possible. In orbit above them, the human fleet maintained its silent watch. 300 dreadnoughts, symbols of humanity's transformation from dismissed primitives to galactic guardians. They were monuments to what could be achieved through determination, sacrifice, and the refusal to accept defeat. And across the galaxy, in hundreds of systems, beings looked up at their own skies and hoped that if they ever needed help, humanity would come for them too. Because humanity had proven one thing beyond all doubt. They remembered those who showed them kindness, and they protected their friends with absolute devotion. The age of the old powers was ending. The age of humanity had truly begun.